speak truth to power. That is an overused term, but it is actually very true as applied to what he is doing today. The truth is that ICE and DHS have deliberately and purposely trained their agents to break the law. I am shocked as I say those words, but they are the truth. ICE has trained officers of the United States government to disregard the Constitution and violate people's fundamental rights, breaking down doors, detaining them with mass sweeps, engaging in brutal and violent conduct that directly contravene our laws. Their training has been truncated and practical tests have been eliminated, reducing them from 25 to 9. But the training has been very specific on one point, and that is that no judicial warrant or court authorization is necessary to break down people's doors and violate their rights. People should be shocked and horrified by what they will hear today, and so should my colleagues. So much so that I am hoping we will have bipartisan support for fundamental and far-reaching reform, that this hearing will be an impetus, among others, that we are having toward reforming ICE in a root and branch way, not just cosmetically, but fundamentally, so that the kind of misconduct that we are seeing in America's communities and streets will be stopped. This training to break the law is not a thing of the past. It's ongoing. It is not accidental. It is purposeful and deliberate. It is not only sanctioned, but it is ordered at the very top of this organization through a memo that explicitly states ICE policy. And Mr. Schwenk will testify about it. It is not a momentary lapse. It is not isolated misconduct. It is purposeful and intentional instruction and teaching about breaking the law. The truth that we will hear today completely discredits statements and testimony, some under oath, by DHS officials within the last few weeks. And we will see and hear evidence today, both in documents that we are releasing and in testimony from Mr. Schwenk, about the training of ICE agents and deliberate concealment of illegal ICE policies, directly refuting sworn testimony of Acting Director Lyons and other administration officials. His testimony shows not only internal chaos and incompetence, but intentional, calculated action that accompanied the brutal violence and violation of rights that we have seen on the streets. A lot of people are wondering, how could this kind of brutality and violence happen at the hands of government officials in America if they had the right training and the right people? And the answer is they had the wrong training and, in many instances, the wrong people. The numbers of people have skyrocketed from 500 a year to more than 3,500. And the training has been truncated and reduced, both in numbers of courses and substantive policy. 2 weeks ago, the head of ICE sat before members of Congress and promised that no cuts have been made to the content of officer training. He claimed that fewer days of training are being made up for with extra hours every day. But as Mr. Schwenk will share, this contention is simply not true. The same head of ICE who contended incorrectly about officer training, also testified about the memorandum in which he announced the administration's new policy to invade American homes based on a permission slip signed by his own employees in violation of the Constitution, which was distributed to all ICE personnel. When I asked for the email distributing that memo, he assured me that ICE would produce it. They still haven't responded because the email doesn't exist. Clearly, that claim was untrue as well. Today, we're also going to hear about the brutal reality of policies that the Trump administration worked so hard to keep secret. Anna Gibson Brown, who is with us today, experienced the reality of that policy on January 11th of this year. She's here today to share her story of her home being violently invaded and her husband being taken without a judicial warrant in one of the most egregious violations of the Constitution I have seen in America. For centuries, our government and our courts have recognized the sanctity of people's homes. John Adams believed that Britain's warrantless entry into American homes, they're breaking down doors and forcibly entering people's houses, was the spark for the American Revolution 250 years ago. The hurt and harm caused to Ms. Gibson Brown and other victims of this lawbreaking will be deep and enduring. But perhaps most troubling, Ms. Gibson Brown, is that what happened to you was not some isolated mistake or accident. It was the result of a strategy, a conscious and deliberate, purposeful strategy taught to agents carefully with a memorandum that was shown to Mr. Schwank when he was told what to train them about breaking the law and violating your rights. That is unconscionable. I want to finish by saying that I am hopeful that Mr. Schwank's example of courage will inspire others to come forward. It has already inspired us on this committee, and I think that the example of others before him are perhaps one of the reasons why he is here. We need more protection for whistleblowers. We need reforms, fundamental and far-reaching, of ICE and DHS. We need America to be as shocked and horrified by what we see here as they should be, because that's the way we will inspire bipartisan reform, and it must be bipartisan. I hope my Republican colleagues will take note and join us in welcoming whistleblowers and they're speaking the truth, truly speaking the truth to power. With that, Representative Garcia.
Well, thank you, Senator Blumenthal, and I want to, of course, thank you again for your leadership and for partnering with the Oversight Committee in the House to really spotlight all the horrors that are happening across the country. We, of course, this is our third hearing on DHS and ICE. We've taken testimony, we've heard important stories, we've talked about the misconduct and, quite frankly, the crimes of this administration. And at our first hearing, we documented how Secretary Noem has been lying when she has talked about not arresting American citizens or detaining U.S. citizens. At our second hearing, we talked about immigration enforcement and how agents have been brutalizing, blinding, beating, and killing Americans and others on the ground. And Oversight Democrats and our Senate partners have been fighting for accountability, for truth, and for the rights of all people. Now, we have documented horrific and terrible violence by this administration and will continue to do so. Now, ICE and DHS are operating like Donald Trump's personal and private military force. They're attacking communities, they're targeting people who are exercising their constitutional rights. And the results, of course, are all around us. We've heard testimony from teachers, from veterans, from people on the ground who have been arrested, shot, or attacked with zero justification. Now, as of February of this year, Oversight Democrats have documented over 530 credible and verified instances of possible abuses and misconduct by President Trump's federal immigration agents, including 224 incidents just with use of force. This is chaos that's been unleashed across the country. It's not just what we have seen, of course, in Minnesota, but everywhere in my home state of California, Chicago, and places across the country. Now, as we will hear today, ICE agents have been ordered to disregard the Constitution and to violate the rights of American citizens and immigrants in this country. And we all understand why the Fourth Amendment is so important and why the Constitution is also so clear. Now, when you look at the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, what's the most important here is the amendment specifies people, not just United States citizens, but all people for a specific reason. And that's been so important to our founders, to the Constitution, and for so many of us that all people are protected. Now, Donald Trump cannot legally send his private police force to smash down your door and take you away, or to enter your house without a legal warrant. Right now, the Trump administration is trying to take away that right. Instead of getting a warrant approved by an independent judge, under his worldview, he believes it's his right to go into any house in any city and do what he pleases. ICE wants to write its own permission slip without a judge to break down your door and to violate your rights. And this should terrify everyone. The same people overseeing and spreading violence and chaos right now are avoiding the Constitution, are breaking down doors, are causing harm, and in some cases, even back in my home state of California, we've seen video footage of agents going to homes without warrants and terrorizing communities. Now, oversight, of course, is critical, and the administration knows that they are being watched carefully. We're forcing them every single day to reevaluate their positions and to ensure that we're pushing the courts to do the right thing. Now, just at our last hearing, Fox News went absolutely crazy because they got upset that we called out Stephen Miller. And in fact, we used this image of Stephen Miller to emphasize the terror that he was causing. And in fact, Jesse Waters and other Fox News podcasters and right-wing media personalities get upset every time that we call out Stephen Miller. Let's be very clear. This is one of the most dangerous men in the administration as it relates to violations of the Constitution. He's terrorizing communities. He's sending ICE out across this country, and he's willing to destroy the law and our Constitution so that he can move forward with his own bigoted worldview of how he views our country. And he is accused, not just Democrats, but folks across this country, of putting immigrants ahead of American citizens. And that is a flat-out lie. We've heard testimony over and over again from American citizens, war veterans like George Rectus, who was arrested just going to work, teachers like Marimar Martinez, who was shot 5 times and had 7 bullets put in her that went in and out of her body by her own government. We had agents that bragged about shooting U.S. citizens to their friends in other agencies. We've heard about testimony from Renee Good's brothers about Americans across the country who have been impacted, like themselves, who lost their own sister because a DHS officer shot her dead without justification. And we heard testimony today from Tiana Gibson Brown, a citizen and a healthcare worker, whose home was swarmed by federal agents with military equipment and without a legal warrant. We are looking out for the Constitution and the rule of law, and Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, and Donald Trump are not going to stop that work. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. I'm going to yield back.
Hey, Sheriff, I spent my career protecting the people of Alabama, and now I'm ready to protect.
Thank you, Congressman Garcia. I'm going to introduce the witnesses and then call on them for your testimony. Tiana Gibson Brown is a United States citizen and resident of Minneapolis. In January, federal immigration agents raided her home, her family's home, and took her husband without a judicial warrant. Eric Schwank was formerly an assistant chief counsel with ICE. From September of last year until earlier this month, he served as a trainer for ICE. He dealt with recruits at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. Steve Brunel is a former general counsel of the Department of Homeland Security and a former chief of the criminal division at the United States Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia, distinguished longstanding prosecutor. We welcome all of you, and Ms. Gibson Brown, if you would please begin your testimony.
I'd like to start by saying thank you for the invite to be here to tell my story. I would also like to start by saying 12/29 was the date my husband checked in with ICE. He had another appointment on January 26th. This all happened on my oldest son's birthday. My name is Tiana Gibson Brown, and today I stand before you not just to speak, but to bear witness. I am here to share a deeply personal and painful experience, how me and my family's Fourth Amendment were violated. Most days when I get off of my night shifts, the mornings have a usual routine for me. I know what to expect, and I expected the same routine of my morning on January 11th. I got off of work around 7:30 a.m., got home, and went to sleep at around 8:30. Except on this day, I was woken up to my husband, Garrison William Gibson Brown, at around 9:30 a.m., telling me that ICE was outside of our home, banging at the door. The second I woke up, I could tell how terrified my husband was. This fear intensified when the constant banging at the door woke our 9-year-old daughter, Miss Anna, up. And from there, the fear only intensified. Garrison went to the door and asked the officers through the closed door about why they were at our home. Followed with this, he asked them if they had a warrant. The officers at the door told Garrison that they did have a warrant, and it was signed by a judge. When Garrison asked to see the warrant, the officer simply ignored his request. Although my husband and I may not be experts in the legality of some situations, we are aware of the fundamentals and understood how the Fourth Amendment shielded us from arbitrary government searches and seizures. Given this, my husband repeatedly requested to see the warrant. The circumstances outside of our home only intensified. We knew our rights though. We knew no one could just barge into our homes without a warrant because this space was ours. The officers started surrounding our property. Our neighbors and other protesters started gathering around, demanding that the officers leave. There was patent fear that filled our home. Although me and Garrison tried to calm ourselves down, knowing that no matter what, our constitutional rights could not be breached by authorities that claim to be law enforcing bodies themselves. In no time, the scene only became more violent. Officers from the truck started shooting pepper spray at the protesters. Amid all of this, but 10 officers approached my front door. They looked like SWAT agents, holding each other's shoulders like a barricade. One of them grabbed a protester that was in the front of my yard from the front of his neck and the back of his head and slung him in the icy ground. The officers walked up to my door and started ramming the door. They hit the door 3 times until the door popped open. My stomach fell. I heard the door pop and I realized we were no longer protected. Far away from ever experiencing anything like this, we've never known anything of the sort. The officers stood at the door and they were pointing their guns at us. 10 officers that were all armed were standing in front of me and my family. Words can never be sufficient for me to portray what sorts of horror we felt in this moment. I stood between the officers and Garrison, and I asked the officers yet again to show me the warrant. Despite all of this, they did not show me anything. My daughter and my little cousin, both children, were rushed in the room by my sister and were told to hide in the closet. The fear in my daughter's eyes is something you can't imagine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Schwank?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, Representative Garcia, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Schwank. I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution when I joined ICE on August 1st, 2021, as an Assistant Chief Counsel. I followed that oath for 4.5 years, working side by side with ICE officers. And I followed it when I resigned on February 13th, 2026, a little over a week ago, so that I could speak to you today. I'm here because I am duty-bound to report the legally required training program at the ICE Academy is deficient, defective, and broken. 5 months ago, I was asked to teach the law to new cadets at the ICE Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, where ICE is training its new, inexperienced recruits. I volunteered, those without law enforcement training, I volunteered to take on this assignment based on my experience in law enforcement oversight, including at the state and local level prior to my work with ICE. On my first day, I received secretive orders to teach new cadets to violate the Constitution by entering homes without a judicial warrant. For the last 5 months, I watched ICE dismantle the training program, cutting 240 hours of vital classes from a 584-hour program. Classes that teach the Constitution, our legal system, firearms training, the use of force, lawful arrests, proper detention, and the limits of officers' authority. For example, they ceased all of the legal instructions regarding use of force. This means that cadets are not taught what it means to be objectively reasonable, the very standard which the law requires them to meet when deciding whether or not to use deadly force. Our jobs as instructors are to teach them so well that they can make split-second decisions about what they can and cannot do in life or death situations. Yet, in the name of churning out an endless stream of officers, DHS leadership has dismantled the academic and practical tests that we need to know if cadets can safely and lawfully perform their job. All to satisfy an administration demanding they train thousands of new officers before the end of the year. DHS told the public that new cadets receive all the training they need to perform their duties, that no critical material or standards have been cut. This is a lie. ICE made the program shorter, and they removed so many essential parts that what remains is a dangerous husk. No reasonable person would believe a training program suddenly cut nearly in half could meet the minimum legal requirements. These aren't abstract rules. They're required in regulations such as 8 CFR 287G1. Congress requires immigration officers to meet minimum standards for a reason. ICE cannot lawfully perform their duties, make arrests, carry weapons, and use force without passing appropriate training. New cadets are graduating from the academy despite widespread concerns among training staff that even in the final days of training, the cadets cannot demonstrate a solid grasp of the tactics or the law required to perform their jobs. Without reform, ICE will graduate thousands of new officers who do not know their constitutional duty, do not know the limits of their authority, and who do not have the training to recognize an unlawful order. That should scare everyone. DHS assures the public these cadets can get the job training on compensate for anything missing at the academy. This is a lie. Many graduates go to their home office just long enough to get their gun, their badge, and their body armor before deploying to places like Minneapolis and other ICE operations with minimal supervision. It's shocking that anyone would think this is safe or responsible. And this pattern of lies is not isolated. It extends beyond the training program to include deceiving Congress and the public about the rules followed by ICE officers once they graduate. On my first day at the academy, I was instructed to read and return a memo in my supervisor's presence, which claimed ICE officers could enter homes without a judicial warrant. The acting ICE director authorized the very conduct that DHS, in its own 2025 legal training materials, had called the chief evil against which the wording of the Fourth Amendment is directed. That is, physical entry of the home without consent or a proper warrant. Never in my career had I ever received such a blatantly unlawful order, nor one conveyed in such a troubling manner. Incredibly, I was being shown this memo in secret by my supervisor, who made sure that I understood that disobedience could cost me my job. ICE is teaching cadets to violate the Constitution, and they were attempting to cloak it in secrecy by demanding that I lie about it. I am here to convey to the public the danger that is being created at the ICE Academy. I know from my conversations with many facility members, many of the faculty, that I am not alone in my fear. Law enforcement is a deadly serious business. It is not a place for shortcuts. Deficient training can and will get people killed. It can and will lead to unlawful arrests, violations of constitutional rights, and the fundamental loss of public trust in law enforcement. ICE is lying to Congress and the American people about the steps it is taking to ensure its 12,000 new officers faithfully uphold the Constitution and can perform their jobs. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today and happy to answer any questions you have now or in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Schwank. Mr. Brunel.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, Representative Garcia, and the members of the committee, both for your leadership on immigration issues and for giving me an opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Steve Bunnell. I was the General Counsel of the Homeland Security Department from 2013 until 2017. I previously had served 17 years as a career federal prosecutor, including several years as the Chief of the Criminal Division in the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Washington, D.C. I am one of 6 former General Counsel and Acting General Counsel of DHS who recently co-authored a guest essay in the New York Times disagreeing with ICE's new policy of relying on administrative arrest warrants to forcibly enter private residence to arrest someone for a civil immigration violation. The 6 of us included top DHS lawyers from the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, and the Biden administration. This is a group that doesn't agree on policy issues always, but we all agreed on this point. The judicial warrant is a requirement of the Fourth Amendment, and it applies to ICE just like it applies to every other federal, state, and local law enforcement agency. What also united and frankly offended all of us who signed that New York Times op-ed was the current General Counsel characterizing career DHS lawyers as, quote, deep state operatives with some sort of hidden agenda to undermine the department's mission. This is a cheap shot, and it's wrong. It's not the so-called deep state that for decades has kept ICE from entering a home using just an administrative warrant. It is the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution and the lawyers who took an oath to support and defend it. During our time at DHS, the 6 of us worked with thousands of DHS lawyers. Those lawyers sought to ensure that DHS's actions are lawful and to protect the constitutional rights of the people DHS agents encounter during operations. To smear career lawyers as deep state operatives for giving legal advice that is faithful to the Constitution is not only offensive, but also dangerous. It sends a message. If you give your best professional advice and urge the department to respect the law, you will be attacked for doing your job. It is a basic principle of the Fourth Amendment that searches and seizures inside a home without a judicial warrant are presumptively unreasonable. Indeed, as Mr. Schwenk just said, the Supreme Court has stated that the physical entry of the home is the chief evil against which the working of the Fourth Amendment is directed. The law is also clear, as Representative Garcia pointed out, that, the law is also clear you can't enter someone's home without a warrant that's been issued by a neutral and detached magistrate or judge. In other words, the police can't sign their own warrants. This is a basic check and balance against tyranny, and also a recognition that in the competitive enterprise of law enforcement, even a good, well-intentioned police officer is subject to the natural human biases that we all share, and therefore needs the approval of a neutral and independent judicial officer before taking an action as consequential as a forced entry into a person's home. And as Representative Garcia noted, it's important to point out that in the context of immigration enforcement, the Fourth Amendment says the people have the right to be protected from unreasonable searches and seizures. It doesn't say citizens, it says the people. It's thus well established that the Fourth Amendment applies to everyone within the physical boundaries of the United States, including immigrants who are not lawfully present. ICE claims that its general statutory detention authority, combined with a final removal order by an immigration judge, is sufficient to satisfy the Fourth Amendment. But that argument doesn't work. Immigration judges are not neutral and detached judicial officers within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment. They work for the executive branch and are subject to the control of the president and the attorney general. Immigration judges also lack the statutory authority to issue warrants, either for an arrest or for a search. I'm happy to flesh out these points and others during my testimony. In closing, I urge the Homeland Security Department to adhere to the Constitution and to end the un-American practice of conducting forcible entries into homes without judicial warrants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brunel. We have been alternating the gavel and the questioning. I'm going to ask Congressman Garcia to go first. I will follow him, and then we're going to go back and forth between the House and the Senate colleagues who have joined us here. And we'll have 5-minute rounds.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Of course, I want to thank our witnesses again for being here. Really important testimony. Particularly want to thank, Mr. Schwenk, your courage for coming forward, and your story, I think, is just obviously so important. I just want to thank you for pointing out how critical it is that we are following the law and the Constitution. And I want to just also make something really clear. This is also about safety in your own home. This is about ensuring that every single American feels that their home is a place for safety for themselves and for their family. Now, Ms. Gibson Brown, you experienced the results of the Trump administration's new unconstitutional policy in person, and it was an attack on your own home and your own family. I want to thank you for telling your story. And the American people should understand and see exactly what this looked like in practice. Now, with your permission, we have asked to show a video so that people can understand what actually happened, what the federal government actually did to you. So this video is just a short minute. We're going to play it real quick on the screen.
What warrant? Wait! There's nobody in here but my babies. Stay in your room and shut the door. Sis, I'm not even talking to nobody. Get your hands off of me. Listen up.
That's really, I think, that's hard to watch, I think, for anybody, and I'm sorry, Ms. Gibson Brown, that you had to experience that. But I think it's important for the American public to see that video. That could happen to any person in this country. And some of what you said, there are kids in this house, show the warrant first. Where is the warrant? Shameful what you had to go through and your family had to go through. Now, Ms. Gibson Brown, you are an American citizen, is that correct? You asked for a warrant, is that correct?
Yes.
And did they show you a valid warrant signed by a judge?
No, they did not.
They did not. Now, Mr. Schwenk, before this new policy that you reported about, would it have been legal for these officers to come into Ms. Gibson's home without a warrant signed by a judge?
Thank you, Congressman. No, the answer is it would not have been legal either before or after this memo came out for them to go into that home.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Gibson, ICE brought overwhelming military-style force into your home. Is that not correct?
Correct.
They forced their way into your home with no warrant, correct?
Correct.
They put your children in danger. Is that how you felt?
Yes.
Can you think of any justification why this level of force, military force, would be needed to
No.
forcefully enter your home?
No, I can't think of any.
This is what happens when we disregard the Constitution, when we disregard the rights of people in this country. This is wrong, it's outrageous, and every person should be ashamed of our own government for causing this kind of terror, not just to you and to your own family and neighborhood, but to folks across this country. There's no other way to describe what they're trying to do than to terrorize communities and neighborhoods. I want to say I am sorry for what you've had to experience. I know that is not enough. This government should be not just apologizing to you, but for they should try to right that wrong. And it's the obligation of all of us here in this room and across the country to stand up to this tyranny. So thank you, and Senator, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Garcia. I'm going to hold up two posters. One of them you've just seen is what happened at your home. The other is of a memo. Mr. Schwenk, I think you'll recognize this memo. It is a memo written by Acting Director Lyons. We've seen it before at this hearing. It says, in effect, ICE officers should violate the Fourth Amendment. Were you taught or told that you should train ICE agents in accordance with this memo?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, on the very first day I arrived at Glencoe to teach, I was told that we were to instruct cadets to follow the instructions in this memo, but that we would not write down any of those instructions, that we would not keep a record that we taught it to them.
That's a critical point, because I asked Acting Director Lyons whether this memo was distributed, and he said, in fact, that it was with an email that so far they have failed to produce. What you're saying is that you were told not to reveal it, correct?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I was told not to discuss this memo. In fact, when it was shown to me, I was told not to take notes on it, that I was not allowed to write down any part of it. And for the record, as an attorney for ICE and someone who routinely receives memos and memoranda issued by the agency, this had never crossed my desk before I arrived at the academy.
So, in effect, you were told, as an instructor on the law, that you were to train ICE agents how to break the law. I think every American should be absolutely horrified by that fact. And you were not alone. This memorandum was the basis for training ICE agents generally. Hundreds, thousands of them during this fiscal year. Let me ask you about topics that there were practical exams on. And I'm going to show you another chart, which, in effect, and you've seen it, it's difficult to decipher in this forum, but it depicts the topics of exams that were given, practical exams and coursework. You've testified as to the reduction. Is it a fact that there was an elimination, not just a reduction in hours of training by almost half, but also on critical substance matters, topics that should have been trained?
Trying to predict the future is a hazardous occupation. The only thing we can be sure of is that it will be absolutely fantastic. I'm thinking of the incredible breakthrough.
Advanced Mower in Bessemer, Alabama is celebrating 40 years in the business in 2022 with brands like Husqvarna.
Thank you, Senator. That is accurate. What you're looking at on those two charts, the shorter one is the amount of testing that's given now in practical exams. The longer one are the practical exams that were given by ICE in its training program before the current surge training course. Those exams that you see there, the longer list, every single one of those was designed to test whether or not cadets could apply in the real world the things they were learning in the academy. Vital lessons on things like how to use their firearm safely, how to encounter an individual they intended to detain, much like Ms. Gibson Brown's husband. Classes that teach them how to do their job safely and lawfully were removed from testing. And what testing was left was reduced or essentially neutered by the way it was given. Tests that were designed and written to be closed book where cadets were tested on what they could remember, because again, go back to, I said this earlier, officers have a split second to decide something. So everything we do is oriented to giving them that split second to act, and they have to know everything for it. We took away the ability to test whether they could.
But what those ICE officers did to Ms. Gibson Brown, what they did to countless people in Minneapolis, what they are continuing to do across the country was not the result of split-level decisions. It was the result of a conscious, purposeful, deliberate policy, carefully taught and trained. And in fact, the reduction in training, for example, on pistol use, on use of force, on other vital topics, was regrettable, but the effects were truly shocking. Let me ask you, because just in the time that we've released these documents, DHS has come forth with a statement, I'm going to quote it. Under these new improvements, candidates still learn the same elements and meet the same high standards ICE has always required. No subject matter has been cut. Is that statement accurate, Mr. Schwenk?
Senator, that statement is not accurate. Not
Yes.
even in the slightest sense.
It is untrue. Would you agree?
Sir, I would call it a lie.
Congressman Garcia, if you would call on someone from your side.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Ansari.
Thank you, Ranking Member Garcia and Senator Blumenthal, for convening both House and Senate Democrats to continue our oversight of DHS's lawlessness and brutality. The Trump regime has used its paramilitary force, DHS, and ICE agents to terrorize communities and families all across the United States. These agents are told to engage in illegal and unconstitutional activity, including illegal use of administrative warrants to invade private homes and mass surveillance to collect data on millions of Americans. Here is just one example. ICE agents breaking down the door of Ms. Tayana Gibson Brown without a warrant to arrest her husband, Garrison Gibson. This fascist paramilitary force, particularly Border Control agents and ICE, are completely untrained to conduct police activity in American cities, resulting in chaos and deadly harm to both members of the public, like Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good, as well as to officers. It is horrific, it is racist, it is fascist, and it is totally illegal. This is still America. Rules apply and the Constitution matters. Under DHS use of force policies, ICE and Border Patrol agents must comply with the Fourth Amendment's restrictions on the use of force. That is, that agents may only use force when, quote, no reasonably effective, safe, and feasible alternative appears to exist, end quote. Instead, agents are engaging in a free-for-all, shooting, tasing, and pepper spraying wherever they see fit. Secretary Noem should resign in disgrace or be impeached. She will go down in history as one of the worst accomplices to this massive abuse of power. We need to rein in ICE and hold the Trump-Epstein regime accountable for its crimes. Now, I want to turn to our witnesses, and I want to thank all of you for being here today and bravely speaking out to shine a light on these abuses. My first question is for Mr. Bunnell. Yes or no, in the absence of an emergency, are ICE and Border Patrol agents legally allowed to knock down someone's door without a judicial warrant and probable cause?
They are not.
And yes or no, also for you, have ICE and Border Patrol agents acted illegally in forcing entry to private homes over the past year without judicial warrants and probable cause?
Based on the reports that we've seen today and what we've heard about, it sounds like they are, yes.
And Ms. Gibson Brown, yes or no, did federal agents present a legal judicial warrant to you when they broke down your front door with a battering ram and entered with guns pointed at you while your daughter was home?
No, they did not.
And to Mr. Schwank, thank you so much for your testimony today. Yes or no, are ICE agents being told they can force entry into private homes without judicial warrants?
Yes, they are.
And you said in your introduction, quote, there was a secretive order to train officers to violate the Constitution. Yes or no, ICE agents are being directed to break the law and violate the Constitution with such directions?
Yes, they're being instructed to violate the law and enter homes using the I-205 warrant process, which is just a permission slip. It's not a real judicial warrant.
Thank you. What we are seeing around the country is an authoritarian police state, the kind created by a shameless authoritarian, Donald Trump, to preserve and expand his power at the expense of our constitutional rights. I will not stop fighting against this fascist paramilitary force, and again, I want to thank the witnesses for your bravery and for your testimony and for your patriotism today. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, and thank my colleagues for this important hearing today. And I will say I've repeatedly challenged my Republican colleagues that if you believe in the Constitution, then you believe in the First Amendment's right to assemble. If you believe in people's liberties, if you believe in the Constitution, then you don't go after people for having a legal permit to carry like they did to Alex Preddy. Then you believe in the Second Amendment. If you believe in the Constitution, then you believe in the Fifth Amendment, right to due process. And if you believe in the Constitution, you believe in the Fourth Amendment right against search and seizure, which is the major part of this hearing that we're talking about today. And I would start with you, Mr. Bunnell. Thank you so much for coming forward. In your written testimony, you noted that the DHS legal training materials previously called physical entry into a home without consent or a judicial warrant the chief evil against which the wording of the Fourth Amendment is directed. As you know, Justice Scalia once wrote that when it comes to the Fourth Amendment, the home is first among equals. Can you explain why the home holds this special importance under the law?
Thank you, Senator. The Supreme Court has spoken to this numerous times over the decades and centuries. The home is the core thing that is at the heart of the Fourth Amendment protections. It's the sanctity of the home. It dates back to the traditions in England before the Declaration of Independence and the sort of notion that a man's home is his castle. And so this is a deeply rooted principle of American jurisprudence.
Thank you very much. And I know we've had it happen numerous times. It wasn't just in the sad case of Ms. Gibson Brown in front of her 9-year-old daughter, husband, sister. It also happened to a Hmong elder who was dragged out of his house by mistake in the coldest day ever in his underwear and thrown in a car and driven around for 24 hours. So Ms. Gibson Brown, You had just come back from your night shift as a nurse, is that right?
Yes,
Is that-
ma'am.
And that's why you're wearing the scrubs in the
Yes.
video?
I had fell asleep with my scrubs on, yeah.
And you work in intensive care unit, is that right?
A pediatric intensive care, yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
21 years.
So there you are, you're home, and then suddenly your husband wakes you up and tells you that this has happened. Could you talk about how you felt at that moment?
I just didn't understand because he had just checked in. And then he had another check-in for the 26th, and it was my son's birthday that day, so I was just in shock.
And is it true then that Judge Bryant, who used to, for my colleagues should know this, he was a assistant U.S. attorney, worked as a prosecutor, and then in the last few years, this went through a confirmation hearing and became a federal judge. He's the judge that then issued an order that this was illegal, what happened to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Schwenk, thank you for coming forward, as my colleagues have noted, and I want you to go over again, because it was just so shocking to me, what was eliminated from the training of these ICE agents, just because it's been my constituents that's been dragged out of their homes, like the Hmong elder. And it is my constituents that have seen repeatedly the racial profiling and this illegal use of force. Tell us what was omitted, taken away from this training when our colleagues in the last few years, coinciding with last summer when they gave them an extra $75 billion. What was taken out of the training, Mr. Schwenk?
Thank you, Senator. What was taken out of the training were classes on use of force, specifically classes taught by the legal department, as well as classes taught by other units. What was taken out was almost 16 hours of firearms training, classes that teach them how to use their weapons correctly and safely. What was taken out were classes on how the Constitution works, what the constitutional requirements are for their job, and the constitutional limits on their authority. In fact, the class where we talk to the officers and teach them about the rights of protesters was cut from a 2-hour program into about 10 minutes. They got shoehorned into a lecture on what the concept of seizure is. There are others. There are many other classes that were cut, but I think these are the most critical for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. I'm going to call on Representative Randall.
Thank you so much, Senator. And thank you to our witnesses for being here today to shed light on the blatant disregard of the rule of law that we have seen from this administration. They're executing illegal warrants in violation of the Fourth Amendment, preventing members of Congress from exercising their lawful congressional oversight duty and failing to uphold tribal sovereignty by rounding up and detaining tribal citizens. I visited the Northwest Detention Center in my district 6 times to ensure that immigrants are being treated with dignity, with humanity, and with care. And what I've seen on each and every visit is a stark reminder of the chaos, the pain, and the confusion at the hands of Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, and Kristi Noem. And what happens when policy is developed from a place of hate and not a place of facts. I've heard report after report of the denial of basic rights within the facility in my district, and twice I've been illegally denied entry when attempting to conduct an unannounced oversight visit to further investigate these concerning reports. And we know that this is only one of the many ways in which this administration is acting illegally. There are 12 tribal nations in my district, and I've heard concerns from so many of them about how ICE and CBP are racially profiling tribal citizens and detaining them, people who are indigenous to this country. I've had tribal citizens tell me they're sending their kids to school with their tribal IDs on them out of safety and fear. And when tribal members show their tribal IDs to ICE and CBP, those officers lack any understanding of tribal ID cards. Last week, Secretary Noem wrote to tribal leaders claiming that no enrolled tribal citizen has been detained and that no ICE operations have occurred on tribal lands. And this is a pure lie. She's calling every tribal citizen who has spoken out about their experience liars, and it is disgusting. Mr. Bonhomme, how are ICE and CBP educating and training officers and agents on the United States government-to-government relationship with Indian tribes?
I might want to punt that one to Mr. Schwank in terms of the training.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar exactly with, how that topic is covered. I will say it was not an issue that percolated to the upper ranks of the department during my time there. And frankly, your description of it is quite concerning in a way that I hadn't heard before. So thank you for raising it.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've continued to hear concerns, not just in my district. When we were in Minnesota, I heard the same thing from tribal leaders there who were looking out for and advocating for the safety of constituents, of their neighbors, of tribal members who, are stopped because they are brown and forced to prove that they are not only indigenous to this land, but that they are citizens. This may be a question for Mr. Schwank also. Given that some tribal leaders have encouraged their members to carry tribal IDs to show ICE and CBP in case they're detained, do you know, are ICE and CBP agents trained on how to identify a valid tribal ID?
I do not, thank you for the question, but I do not have any particular information on how they're trained to identify tribal ID. I do know there are general classes on identification documents that they take, but again, because we have eliminated practical testing, I have no idea if they're actually learning it.
Yeah.
In the materials I teach, where I talk to the academy, the only things we discussed involving Native Americans were the possibility that some Native American tribes have the ability to cross the United States border. And that was really all we ever covered in that side of it.
Thank you. What about racial profiling? Can you tell us what guidance was provided to ICE agents regarding racial profiling?
Yes, yes, Representative. In the training material that we taught, the material calls for the department to follow the Department of Justice's guidelines on the use of race and other factors in law enforcement operations. But in practice, what the cadets are taught is to follow what's called the Kavanaugh stop. That is, that they are allowed to use race as a factor, not the sole factor, but a factor in their operations.
Thank you. I think we've all seen the disturbing effects of that practice in our communities and across the country, and I really appreciate you for being here and sharing. Thank you. I yield back.
Vida Mahjong. Install and go.
It's sincere, baby. You wanna live in style. Luxury watch on your wrist.
Thank you, Representative Brandel. Senator Wells.
Well, thank you all very, very much, each of you, and we're all horrified at what happened to you, Ms. Gibson Brown. Let me just ask a question, Mr. Schwank. With respect to that attack on the home of Ms. Gibson Brown, aside from the warrant question, why in the world, and in what world, did we need a force with automatic rifles, combat fatigues, helmets, the whole military operation? What part of Homeland Security requires that to go to this woman's home?
Thank you, Senator. I can address that question to some degree. Part of that I have to defer on because I believe it might reveal tactical practices of the agency, and I don't feel comfortable disclosing that. But to what I can address is that those officers in that situation, regardless of how they show up to the scene, however they're dressed, whatever equipment they're carrying, are supposed to know their constitutional law, their understanding of what their authority is, well enough that regardless of whatever orders they receive before they show up.
Let me interrupt for a second. I get that. I'm just shocked that you would have that level of force to show up at this woman's home. I mean, my view of that, it's intended to intimidate not just Ms. Gibson Brown and terrorize her family and her children. It's intimidating to everybody in this country to see that level of force. How about you, Mr. Vanel? Thank you so much, by the way. The deep state, I just laughed when I heard that. Because, my sense of what you do and your colleagues and people who've been career prosecutors, suggest a commitment to the Constitution, a commitment to professionalism, a commitment to duty. If that's the deep state, That's a pretty good state to be in. I want to express my gratitude for the work you are doing and your colleagues. But what about this question of having a decision made by a superior to deploy people in combat gear, automatic rifles, to go out to a citizen's home? I mean, leave the warrant part of it alone. With or without a warrant, I'm shocked that that is what you had to arrive home to.
Well, I share your reaction to it as kind of wildly over the top. I mean, why you need to dress like you're invading Iraq in order to go apprehend somebody who is not a fugitive. I mean, I think that's the point that gets lost a little bit is, yes, there may be some probable cause that somebody is removable, but a warrant is usually something for somebody who is a fugitive.
Right.
As I understand, Mr. Gibson's situation, he had removal orders. He received a removal order in 2009, and he'd been checking in regularly as he was supposed to, including right up, shortly before.
That's a discretionary decision by somebody higher up in the chain that sent these officers out in that way, right?
Yes, it was not a judicial officer. It was somebody, their supervisor in the field office.
Yeah, it's part of the Kristi Noem terror campaign against Americans.
Right. I would also just note that to the extent that ICE at least purports to want to have a strong partnership with state and locals and would like to improve their reputation in the communities that they say they're trying to protect and serve, this strikes me as an extremely, shall we say, odd way to build trust and credibility with either the people of the community or the state and locals.
How about counterproductive?
There are probably much stronger words that could be, at a minimum, odd and counterproductive.
Let me ask both of you, is there any justifiable reason, any justifiable law enforcement reason that the standards of training in safety and policing that apply to the Burlington, Vermont Police Force, to the Vermont State Police Force, to police forces in all our jurisdictions in the country should not apply to ICE? Mr. Schwenk.
Thank you, Senator. And my answer to your question is no. At a root level, all law enforcement should be trained to a minimum standard to understand when they can and cannot enter a home, when they can and cannot use force, when they can and cannot make an arrest. And this was the point I was approaching earlier, Senator, is that regardless of how they showed up at the scene, regardless of how they were told to dress when they came there or what they were told to carry, every one of those officers was supposed to know what they were allowed to do under the Constitution. And that was the point of the training program, is to teach them to know that and to know it well enough that even if they got an order that was unlawful, they would know not to follow it.
Thank you. Thank you. My time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call up Representative Walkinshaw, please.
Thank you, Ranking Member, and thank you all for being with us. We're a nation in crisis right now. The Trump administration has turned American cities into war zones, unleashing masked, minimally trained agents and falsely claiming that these agents have absolute immunity from prosecution. Now DHS has embarked on a secretive campaign, as we've heard today, in disregard of the Constitution to allow warrantless entry into the homes of U.S. citizens. And I just have to say, I serve in the House of Representatives with a lot of folks who describe themselves as small government, limited government conservatives. They even have a caucus called the Freedom Caucus. If the federal government can smash down your door while your children are sleeping without a warrant signed by a judge, you do not have a small or limited government. And if you allow that, if you countenance that, you do not believe in freedom. The action these agents are taking are abuses of civil liberties that stem from a central truth. Secretary Noem's Department of Homeland Security believes it is above the law. Judges across the country have documented this lawlessness, including the Honorable Patrick Schiltz, a Republican-appointed federal judge in Minnesota, who identified at least 96 court orders that ICE violated across 74 cases. We have lawyers here today with DHS experience and a U.S. citizen testifying that when the department cannot bend the legal system to a...
Good evening, this is Elder G again. So now you see the Democrats had to do a shadow hearing because the Speaker of the House would not have a hearing and the Senate wouldn't have a hearing in leadership. So the Republicans in the House majority and the Senate, that's supposed to be the one that wrote all the laws, that's supposed to have oversight, all the laws they wrote by white folks. Now they're teaching their new ICE and border agents to violate people's constitutional rights. Not because they did something against the Constitution. I'm talking about American citizens and people that are legally here. You come into their house like SWAT. You breaking down their door and they got children and everything in the house, and people is not fully trained on how to use force. This is I just saw the hearing today. And after listening to the hearing and listening to the testimony, as a man of God, I have to make a decision on where I stand. Who do I believe by what I heard and what I hear and see from the Trump administration? The Bible says I am supposed to judge a man, a woman character by the fruit that they bear. I'm supposed to judge by whatever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. If you sow discord, you're going to receive discord. If you show hate, you're going to receive hate. Now, the Bible says you don't start nothing. You obey the laws, you obey the Constitution, and you go by the rules. Nobody have more rights than you. We are all equal in the Constitution, and no one is above the law, not even the president. Not even the vice president. No one. Under the Constitution, we cannot have a king or a dictator. And President Trump is trying to be a king or a dictator. He do not believe in the Constitution. Let me tell you what the Bible says as Christians, what we're supposed to go by. In order for something to be confirmed, all you don't need a federal government, you don't need a federal judge, you don't need a lawyer or a prosecutor or a police or FBI. The Bible says that in order for something to be confirmed, all we need is 2 or 3 eyewitnesses. That's all we need to make a decision to move. Okay? I know what Christian Nome does. I know she's a white supremacist. I know what Pam Bundy is. Pam Bundy is a white supremacist. I know what J.D. Vance is. Hillbilly J.D. I know what he is. He's a white supremacist. And the president of the United States, he's a white supremacist. I know who Clarence Thomas is on the Supreme Court and Judge Ito. I know, and Judge Kavanaugh, I know, even though Clarence Thomas is black, he's still a white supremacist. See, white supremacy is an ideology that white people go by. It's not about the color. If you come in with them and see, they want some minority. They want about a third of the Republicans to be minority so they can say they got bipartisan support. But they don't care nothing about them black people. They don't care nothing about the Mexicans. They just using them because they got to sell food to black people. They got to sell gas to Mexicans. They got to sell fruit to Asians. See, it's all a scam. They just wolf in sheep clothing. So now you got to make a decision. The leadership in the House and the leadership in the Senate that's supposed to have oversight, that's supposed to account for every dollar of taxpayer money that's being spent, to make sure that every law is enforced and protected. The House and the Senate and the Supreme Court gave all that up to go with the devil. They gave it all up. The Supreme Court, while Trump was running to be president, the Supreme Court said that Donald Trump has got absolutely immunity. As long as he can get back into that White House, he can do anything he wants to, even assassinate his opponent. The Supreme Court gave the president to come permission to violate people's rights. The Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, knowing that they swore to uphold their oath against any attack, foreign or domestic, told the ex-president while he was running, if he get back into office, he can do anything he wants as long as he's president. Even if he has to assassinate his opponent. And that's just what he started doing. Going into Venezuela, snatching the president out. What is that, your business? Why don't the people in Venezuela take care, just like we taking care here? Let them take care of their country. If they want to overthrow that dictator, they can. Who told you to go in there and overthrow the dictator and take their oil? Who gave you that right? You wouldn't want nobody to come do it to the United States. You just doing that because they black and brown people. You evil. Violating people's rights. Breaking down people's doors. Shooting people in the back. Shooting people in cars. Ripping kids out of their mother's hands. You're not going to go into the hood and do that. If you was in the hood and you broke up in there with some drug dealers or some gang members, and you go and you try to break up in there, you know there's gonna be some ICE and border agents laying dead on the street. Because those people already lived the law even before this. Now we seeing that the federal government, the DOJ, the Defense Department is just blowing boats out the water without due process, breaking into people's apartment, coming down out of helicopters, violating people's rights. You know where we're going, right? You know they doing that to the people that obey the law. But what about when they get to the people that don't obey the law? You see what happened in Mexico when they slaughtered the cartel leader, what is the last time I looked? 25 border agents is dead now because they assassinated the cartel leader. See, a cartel is bigger than the government in Mexico. They got better weapons than the government. So when you go and kill a cartel leader, the cartel leader is gonna strike back. You kill one, they quota may be 30, it may be 40, it may be 50. By killing that leader, 25 or more border agents is dead. Those drug dealers, they are not making people use drugs. The people are coming to them with their cold, hard money, buying the drugs. Now, if you want to help somebody, put more money into facilities to help people get off of drugs. But when you assassinate a cartel leader, they're going to strike back by killing 20, 25, or 30, or even 100 of yours. See, that drug dealer, the people that under that drug dealer control, they getting paid a salary, just like Congress getting paid a salary. They getting paid to protect that leader. And when you take out that leader, you're going to get a whole bunch of innocent people dead. Just remember, nobody make you take drugs but your doctor. Your doctor is the one that must first prescribe you fentanyl because you had some kind of pain and you had a weak mind and you got hooked. Your doctor is the one that got you hooked on Oxycontin. And because you got hurt and you got in pain, and they gave you something to solve the pain, but it made your pain worse because it turned you into a drug addict. One of the women with one of the best voices in the world, Whitney Houston. All that money, I think the last time I saw when she was at the top of her game, I think she was worth something like $70 million. But she got strung out on cocaine. And now she's dead. And her daughter is dead. Prince, one of the greatest musicians, he broke his hip. The doctor, because of the pain, the doctor strung him out on drugs. And then when the doctors realized that they had made Prince a drug addict, they stopped selling him drugs, and he had to go to the street now and buy his drugs. That's why Prince is dead. Not because of the cartel in Mexico. It's because of that doctor with an MD after his name. He the one that got you hooked on the drug. That's why there's a drug dealer almost on every corner. Walgreens, CVS, Target, Kroger's, Publix, Sam's. Just about every big store you go into, there's a drug dealer that says pharmacy up there. Long as you got an insurance policy, we'll pump all the heroin we want up in you, all the cocaine we want up in you, all the fentanyl you want up on you. But then when that little poor man got hooked on drugs, he don't have Blue Cross. He don't have Medicaid or Medicare. He had to go out there and beg, steal, and borrow just to get his habit because the doctor is the one that hooked them on the drugs in the first place. The doctors is the biggest drug dealer in the United States of America. The doctors. They the one that invented and start pumping that stuff up into people. Don't use your own defense. What about when they didn't have medicine? How do you think those people did it? When they didn't have no hospital room, how do you think those people 3,000 and 4,000 years ago, how do you think they survived? Because they were strong. They learned how to endure. But this new generation don't want to endure nothing. All they do is whine. They done sold us out. They done sold us out, and they're running after Lucifer for comfort. They are selling their soul. They are violating the Constitution and getting weapons and equipment, and then they're attacking us with our own money, with our own equipment. Using and abusing us. We are the Constitution. The Constitution is of the people, it's by the people, and it is for the people. That's what we're supposed to do with our tax dollars. We're supposed to help people that can't help themselves. We're supposed to build up what is torn down. We're supposed to strengthen what is weak. We're supposed to help them build a bridge across troubled water. We're supposed to help them find a way out of no way. That's our duties as followers of Christ. That's our duty under the Constitution, that everybody have rights that are given to them by God, the right to speak, the freedom of the press, the freedom of your religion, the right to bear arms, the freedom to assemble, or to petition your government. All those rights are given to you by God and is given to you by the Constitution. Nobody has more rights than you. What did the House of Representatives and the Senate say right here in this shadow hearing? No one has the right to enter your house without a warrant signed by a judge. Now, your Congress and your senators is telling you that, and your senators, that's what you sent them to Washington, D.C. for, to look out for you, to let you know when they think the country is violating your right. That woman they bust up in her house, it's already been proven in this hearing that it was illegal. Now the taxpayer may have to pay her $10 or $15 million. Because our no-good government is teaching his ICE and border agent not to follow the law. I believe that the senators and the people from the House of Representatives that bring this here, I believe them. I believe each and every one of those witnesses has testified, and most of them is on videotape. There is no question in my mind. I met protocol. At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, something is confirmed. Donald Trump is against black and brown people. Not because the black and the brown people is doing something against them. He's mad because the black and the brown people is getting ready to be the majority. And they ain't gonna let black and brown people rule over their prejudiced self. They're not gonna lower their self down to that standard. That's beneath them. So you know your federal government, ICE and Homeland Security and DOJ, Kristi Noem, Kash Patel, Pam Bundy, you know they ain't with you. They with the devil. Your job is it's confirmed that our rights is being violated. And we have to look out for ourselves. Our federal government under the Republican Party in the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court, they're not going to help us. They don't made their decision that they're going to run with the devil. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what to do in your household. But I'll tell you, I ain't going to let nobody take away my freedom. The same freedom that you want as a human being, I'm not going to let you come take my freedom. You don't have the rights. You don't have no more rights than I do. It's sad. It's sad that people been in charge since the 1300s, over 500 years, as saying that God is with them. It is less than 10% of the world's population, and it's decreasing more and more every day. But they prejudice and they blindness, but will never let them see. What do you do when someone is so blind and you know they can't see? God got a name for that. He turned you over to a reprobated mind. Are you going to stand up for freedom? Are you going to stand up for righteousness? Are you going to stand up for justice? Are you going to stand up for the Constitution? I choose. I didn't like the Constitution when they X'd out slavery at 3/5 of a human being. But things have been amended where I got the same rights now. And I'm not going to let anybody try to take the freedom that my ancestors and things that died for, that worked in slavery for 240 years for. I'm not just going to sit there and let someone take freedom that took us over 400 years to get. You messed up this time, prejudiced white people, and the blacks and the brown that support you. You messed up this time. See, this time, God is the one that raised us up. God is the one that opened our eyes to see. God have finally shined the light into darkness that we may see. All you got to do is accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. Let Jesus lead you and guide you in the way that he would have you to go. As long as you follow protocol, it's not what you do. As long as you follow the protocol from Genesis to Revelation. How can your enemies enter into the strong man's house? Unless he first bind the strong man, and then he'll be able to spoil his good. God tell us we don't let nobody bind us. Because don't nobody, no human being have no more rights than you. Nobody can bound me. Unless they done bound me up somewhere or I'm dead. If you can't stand up for freedom, if you can't stand up for justice, if you can't stand up for integrity, why don't you just get out of the way and let the people that's going to stand up for this freedom, that's going to keep our Constitution, they're going to keep our freedom. We have every right to protect ourselves against tyranny. Every right in the Constitution of the United States of America. Like I said in my video, don't say anything negative about the Constitution. Don't burn no flag. If they don't start nothing, it won't have to be nothing. But you have every right If they have the right to protect their freedom, we have the right to protect our freedom. The Lord is with us. All we got to do is let Jesus lead us and guide us in the way that he would have us to go. The Bible said that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. From Genesis to Revelation, you can use every tool in the Bible. God named the first king Saul. He named the second king David, the United Kingdom, and then he named the third king Solomon. King Saul reigned for 40 years, and his kingdom ended. David reigned for 40 years, and his kingdom ended. Solomon reigned for 40 years, and his kingdom ended. 40 for Saul, 40 for David, and 40 for Solomon. That's 120 years. That's how long a human being can live. It's 120 years old. Moses was 120 years old when he died. See, it's how you look at the rule. You're supposed to look at the rule on Christ's side. Justice, mercy, freedom, joy, being meek, integrity, love for one another, and the love for God. Those are all the good things. And you're supposed to do whatever it takes to protect it. To protect your home, sometimes you may have to take somebody's life. If somebody tries to break in your house, you're going to stop them. If someone, you're walking down the street and someone is coming down the street in a car trying to run you over, it's your duty to stop them. If somebody trying to steal your money or steal your car, you're supposed to do whatever you can to stop them. That's what the Constitution gives us. The state of Alabama, we have a stand your ground law. It says that you don't have to retreat. You don't have to go to the left or the right. You don't have to bag up. That's what stand your ground means. It means that if somebody is coming after you, trying to hurt you, you got every right to stop them. That's not just for the Republican or the Democrat or the Independent or the Green Party. That's for every human being in America. We all have the same rights under the Constitution. We are equal under the Constitution. No matter what color you are, or where you're from, or who you love, you have just as much right. If someone bring an army after you, you got every right to try to stop it. You don't have to let nobody take away your freedom. You bow the knee to no man. You only bow your knee to your Lord and your Savior, Jesus Christ. Do not break the Constitution. Do not break the law. But if someone comes trying to take your freedom, you have every right to defend. That's God's law. And that's the Constitution of the United States of America. Don't let nobody say you less. Don't let nobody look down on you. Ain't nobody more important than you. The Native Americans didn't take nothing from you, white people. The Mexicans didn't take nothing from you, white people. The Asians didn't take nothing from you, white people. The Arab, they didn't take nothing from you, white people. The black, we ain't take nothing from you. You are the one that raped our women. You are the one that hung our brothers and sisters on trees. You are the one that helped black people in slavery for 240 years and worked them with no pay, with no education, with no rights to bear arms, no rights to vote. You are the only one that take away other people's rights, not because they did anything to you, but because of the color of their skin or who they love. That ain't your job. The Bible tells you that you let the wheat and the tare grow together into the harvest. And when Jesus come back, he's going to send his angel, which he called reapers. And they're going to go and they're going to first gather up the tares and they're going to put them in bundles to be burned. But they're going to gather the wheat into the barn. The wheat represents Christ and the tares represents the devil. You got free choice to go either way you want to go. But don't come over on the right side trying to steal God's sheep. We're not going to come over there and try to steal the devil's sheep. The goat thing, sheep, the goat. We're not going to come over there trying to steal your goats. And we're not going to let you come over there and try to steal our sheep. Just like we give you the freedom to take whichever path you want to take, we want that same freedom. If someone want to come to Christ, don't try to hinder them. And the people that's begging and fighting to go over there to the devil, Christ and Christ's followers are not going to try to hinder you. God already told us that a well cannot bring forth fresh water and salt water at the same time. The Bible also tells you, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall you reap. That ain't what I said. That ain't what the blacks say or the brown. That's what God says. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. So you're going to reap what you sow. Not because I say so, it's because God says so and Christ says so. Look around. Be afraid. Because you're going to have to stand before the judgment seat of Christ one day. And you're going to have to give an account for your evil deeds. But that's up to God. God told me to preach the gospel, tell the truth. That's all I'm doing. I don't mess with nobody. And I don't want nobody to mess with me. If you want to go to hell, go ahead. But don't try to pull a child of God out of Jesus' hand and try to pull him into the furnace just because you lost the battle. If they want to go with you, let them go. But if they want to go with Christ, I'm going to try to help them any way I can. That's what love is all about. When you love God and accept Christ as your own personal Savior, you have to deny yourself. You have to deny your ideals. You have to deny what you want. And you have to take up your cross and follow Christ. That's what I choose. I choose to deny myself. And I choose to take up my cross and follow Christ. Wherever Christ lead, I'll follow. If Christ goes to the left, I'll go to the left. If Christ goes to the right, I'll go to the right. If Christ stop, I'll stop. That's all you got to do. Put your trust in the Lord, and he will direct your path. And all your ways, acknowledge him. And he going to direct you. He'll tell you to move, to do this or do that. All I'm asking you to do is trust him. 100% put your trust in Jesus, and he'll bring you through. Thank you.